Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to Pioneering Change, everyone. I'm your host, Farmer Ryan Early. Today, I've got a very special guest, Dr. Calvin Johnson, who has an extensive background in orthopedic surgery, specifically in sports medicine. So, Calvin, thank you for joining us today. I'm very glad to have you on the show. Look forward to hearing a little bit about your background and where you come from and how you got into sports medicine.
Appreciate it. I come from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Back then, it was a big area for Phillips. That was their headquarters. And so they had a pool and a basketball gym. And so I think as a little kid, my parents threw me in there and said, here, go play while we work. And my mom was a nurse. And so I met the orthopedic surgeon there quite a few times from injuries. Dr. Ziders, great guy and a veteran. And I just enjoyed what he did. And I also, in high school, worked for the ambulance company. And that was an experience. The name of the company that owned the ambulance was also Niekamp Funeral Home, and and I hope this isn't off color, but their saying was, "We get them either way." But I learned a lot. I mean, a lot of anatomy. I learned that I liked helping people. I learned that people get hurt bad in car wrecks or shootings or stabbings or whatever, and it appealed to me. Wasn't too excited about treating patients with cancer, patients that died and all that stuff. So all that headed me towards orthopedics, and I like saying that I do orthopedic medicine. I did do 26,000 surgeries in my 31-year career. Wow. But those were torn cartilages. Those were things that couldn't really be fixed any other way. And when I did my fellowship up in Chicago, Dr. Heffern and Dr. Bach took care of the pro teams there. And what they taught me was that, everyone's an athlete. Professional athletes obviously are different. And they said, look, if we can create a healthy environment for that athlete, he's going to perform better, he's going to get injured less, and everybody's going to be happier. So nutrition, recovery, and then just accurate treatment, accurate diagnosis of the problem, and then mapping out a program. But there was even back then there was a lot of use of supplements and anything to help them get in the zone.
I think you said something very important right there. In those three things, I like to start with the third one, accurate diagnosis. Right, it's hard to develop a nutritional plan or a treatment plan or even lay out treatment options if we don't have an accurate diagnosis. If we're not actually, and so today I feel like so often many PCPs or family doctors are quick to refer out to specialists, and I know I've dealt with this personally in my family with my wife. We got sent to a cardiologist, and they said, no, it's not a cardiologist, it's pulmonology. So we got to go look at pulmonology. The pulmonologist said, no, it's cardiology, right? You go about the cardiologist. So we go about the cardiologist. He said, oh, yeah, it's me. And he figures out what was going on, and luckily, nothing to be worried about. Everything was good. Jordan had an enlarged carotid, and it was getting worrisome, right? You could see it actually enlarged and pulsating, and so after going in and getting everything checked out, turns out everything was good. So, but it was a scare. But at the same time, that's $3,000 worth of copays and 7 months of getting back to where we have a good safe field. But had that been something more serious, I feel like 7 months it may not have been an option. And so I think that as we're moving forward, I'm working with a lot of primary care physicians, family health care doctors, and more of them I feel like are starting to look a little closer versus just referring out immediately. And 100 years ago, that was medicine, right? You went to your family doctor, and if you needed, let's say 150 years ago, he had cocaine, opium, cannabis pills, and multiple different herbs and spices and different snake oils. Some of them we now know didn't really do much. Some of them we know did a lot. And many pharmaceutical drugs were patented based off of some of those plant-based medicines that were very common 150 years ago. Somewhere around the teens, 20s, 30s, pharmaceutical medications started really becoming more prevalent, right? And that's when I think modern medicine has kind of been built out of, and now it just, I am starting to see physicians, Dr. Meehan in Tulsa, several of them that are now utilizing natural homeopathic nutrition and plant-based programs across all spectrums prior to jumping straight to a prescription or straight to referring out to a specialist. And I feel like that's kind of a good trend.
Yes.
If you will. I know you've got some really neat stuff that you and your wife have been working on with oxygenation
Right.
in the blood. And I'm sure some viewers would love to hear more about some of that.
Yeah. Well, and just to back up, what you said was huge. Modern medicine is different. I won't go into how different. I am 65. I don't take any medications. I do take supplements, and I do exercise. But old time medicine, your doctor basically, he's the guy who decided what your treatment was. He's the guy who diagnosed you, or she. There wasn't a lot of women in medicine in the 50s, but as we got older, and women, I'm a surgeon. Women have great hands as far as surgery. They're amazing, and they're intuitive on getting the right diagnosis. But back then, your provider directed your care, and it wasn't an insurance company saying, no, you can't do that. I didn't get into private practice till I was 32 years old, because I went straight out of college, and I went straight into medical school, 4 years, 5 years of orthopedics, and then a year in Chicago. So I didn't practice until I had really learned my trade. And the number one thing that Dr. Kopta, who was one of my head doctors, said, you have to have the right diagnosis, and no matter what. And you do that by talking to your patient. You do that by examining your patient. And yeah, we may do an x-ray or a test or whatever, but 95% of the time, I can figure out what's going wrong with somebody by talking to them and listening to them and examining them. Not on some little computer over here, getting the note to Cigna or Aetna or any of those other entities.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, again, you mentioned you were at Chicago. How long were you at Chicago?
89, 90, 1 year. It's called a fellowship, and so it's an extra year of training. I really enjoyed sports medicine. We were laughing earlier, but my career got cut short. And at OU, I was walked on as a freshman and got cut from the team, and so at that point I had to get serious and start studying. But I learned a lot. I mean, athletes, everyone is an athlete. Every person, if you break your hip, you're an athlete, and you've got to figure out how to recover. Hopefully we can, we'll have things like the ozone therapy. What ozone therapy is hyperoxygenation of your blood. It's all organic. It's all you. It's not anything added. That's like regenerative medicine, stem cells, PRP. Again, that's all your body. Everything that I've learned to be 65, and I still run 5Ks. Now, did I have knee replacements? Yeah, that was because of being a knucklehead when I was in my 20s. But now, I'm super healthy. I feel healthier than I was 10 or 15 years ago, and it's from meeting people like yourself and Amanda Bertone, and my wife's an ICU nurse, and she, basically she's seen what works and what doesn't work, and what works is good nutrition, exercise. Lifting weights is the fountain of youth. Even if you got a 5-pound dumbbell and you're able to just 5-pound dumbbell and you just can do any kind of exercise, that's going to help.
Very good. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some current events and projects that you have going on and we're working on together.
I'm ready.
All right.
Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.
Dr. Calvin Johnson here on Pioneering Change today. Calvin, we have already talked about some amazing things. We kind of left off, we were talking about ozone therapy. And I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to ask you about it anyways.
Yeah, good. Well,
so would you talk a little more about that process,
yeah.
what the benefits are, what it's an alternative to, if you will?
Correct. Well, it's the books on it are this thick.
Yes, sir.
The thing is, it's been around for over 100 years. And originally, it was used as a disinfectant on surfaces to kill bacteria before we had antibiotics. And so simply what we do is we draw your blood out. We use a UV light to change that O2. Everybody knows H2O is water and just oxygen binds, and it makes it into an ozone. Everybody says, well, ozone's bad. No, ozone layer of the stratosphere is only bad because it has nitrates and sulfides and all those negative things that go with it. Our body thrives off of oxygen. And so what ozone therapy does, we oxygenate that blood into ozone, and only about 3% of the cells do that, and then we pump them back into the body. We don't add anything, we don't subtract anything, and basically it is an optimal treatment for anything that's caused by inflammation, and that can be cancers. We have patients who've had improvement from their cancers, and do we say it cures? No.
Sure.
It's an adjunct, to whatever their chemo doc or whoever is giving them, but it's a recovery agent. The mitochondria in your cell is the engine, and basically this is like putting high octane gas and the best oil you can put in your engine, and it makes those cells more efficient. At 65, I have 2% of the stem cells I had when I was born. This generates our cells to make more cells, our immune cells, our joint cells, our organ cells, everything, is improved by this simple 30-minute procedure. Now, can you do it wrong? Absolutely. But it's a proven entity. It's like ivermectin. It's been around forever. It's been studied. And so just what I would say is Dr. Schellenberg out of Utah has a great book on ozone therapy. Research it. And then there's people that are doing it in every city. It's not crazy. I mean, I hear stories about stem cells costing $20,000 and this and that. This is nothing like that.
Right.
But there's some very good doctors in town that are doing it, and it's. I like Warren Buffett's quote. Now that I'm the third richest guy in the world, I want to be the oldest. And so this could help Warren Buffett. Maybe he just needs to come to Oklahoma and get some ozone therapy, and we'll make him be the oldest.
There you go. Well, I know Krista passed the invite to me. I do need to get on her schedule and come see her. I'm hoping it may help with some of the inflammation and pain I've got from, of course, my racing accident a few weeks ago. So very much looking forward to it. I guess this would kind of be like, Jordan, my wife, did a hyperbaric chamber protocol, right? Where she goes in the hyperbaric chamber, oxygen, enriched chamber.
Very good treatment.
And essentially, what you guys are doing is bypassing all of that and actually directly infusing oxygen into the blood. Which again, versus breathing oxygen or being in a deprivation chamber, those are all great ways to increase oxygen.
Right.
This actually is cutting straight to the source, right? And,
Absolutely.
And putting it right back in the body.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the effects are almost immediate. As far as
I mean, we had Krista's dad down. He's from Durant, and he's had heart surgery and all that. He's 88 years old, and long story short, he had an oxygen level of 70. Normally, it's going to be 95 to 100, and so he did the traditional things, and they said, look, it's not your heart. He was on oxygen, and he could go about 10 feet, and he had to stop. So he was staying with us. We basically did all the traditional things and got the diagnosis, and we found out that basically he had too much fluid in his system, so he was having some heart failure. We did an ozone therapy on him. The only thing we did different was just the ozone therapy. We didn't do anything different with his oxygen. So his oxygen level was 72. Overnight, the next day, went to 92.
Wow.
And he was able to walk and function and go home because he doesn't like big city Oklahoma City. He's from Kingston, and he's been at home
Not a bad
partying
little
like a
place
rock
to be.
star ever since. He loves sports, and you know, like we called to check on him. He and his friend Donna were down there watching the sports games, and they're big Cowboys fans. And it just, you know, I was worried that we were going to have to put him in the hospital. And when that happens for this problem, it's the outcomes really aren't very good.
Now, I know you've also, you mentioned earlier stem cells, and you've done some work with some T cell or stem cell.
Stem cell, not T cell. Yeah, stem cell basically for just treating joints. About 15 years ago, I went to Switzerland, International Cartilage Research Society meeting, and met a lot of European doctors that had been doing these biologic injections, PRP, platelet-rich plasma, and mesenchymal stem cells. Again, organic. We're taking that out of our body, blood draw, put it in the joint, put it in the tendon. And one of the newer things that I think is really legit is ultrasound. You know, with all the Clarius is a very good company, and they use AI to basically put the ultrasound down onto our elbow or on the knee or wherever you put it, and you can literally see through the sound waves that bounce off of the different tissues. They have different densities.
Right.
And so that way we know exactly where we're putting the injection. We can also diagnose. Like we said, we can diagnose tendon problems, soft tissue problems, and then you basically, we're always trying to be cost effective, minimally invasive, and, you know, great outcomes.
Well, I think that is, you know, that is the future, is utilizing modern technologies and even modern medications when it calls for it, along with natural therapies, I guess would be the proper terminology for T cells, stem cell, etc. I think that excites me as much as anything.
Absolutely.
To know that there are groups that are looking into developing, that have been developing that, not looking into it, pioneering some of that stuff. And so that is just freaking awesome.
Yeah,
Love
well, I mean, especially for those of us, well, anybody that's injured or wants to recover, but especially, you know, being over 50, you know, I saw my parents age, and, you know, my dad broke his hip, my mom had heart issues, and, you know, they were back in the days when smoking was healthy,
True.
you know, and they'd quit, but they, you know, their last years weren't as active and as fun as I would love to have them be, you know, but, you know, they did well, and a lot of that was because they had good nutrition, good hydration, and I intervened a few times. They tried to do chemotherapy on my dad's prostate cancer when he was in his 70s, and I got a second opinion. Go get a second opinion.
You heard it from the doc.
Go get a second opinion. We get second opinions on trips to do this, or houses, or cars, or whatever.
Relationship advice, whatever, right? Like,
Yes, well, we're going to stay away from that. I'm not an expert in that area. So, you know, Dr. Archer was older than this guy, and he said, look, Calvin, your dad is not going to die from prostate cancer. Yes, they can treat it, and yes, they can make his PSA go down. So we didn't do it. My dad died at 93 from a broken hip. The cancer never took care of him. So get a second opinion. Research this stuff on your own. Don't believe me. You know, don't believe anybody. Just ask their source, and then go to that source and say, yeah, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't make sense. But don't let somebody else guide where you're going to be with your health.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk about a project that we're working on together.
Awesome.
Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.
welcome back to Pioneering Change. Again, we've got special guest, Dr. Calvin Johnson in the house, giving us a little bit of history and insight into his experience into orthopedics and specifically sports medicine. We have a great new project we're working on currently that will impact mostly diabetics. As you know, there's a mass shortage of diabetic medications. Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, and a few doctors over there have asked us to work on a program introducing natural supplements in place of certain diabetic medications. And so the CBD products that we manufacture that you've been working with for 3-4 years now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So very excited to get that going, and I know you said you've been doing a little bit of digging in that, and you know, with just your history in dealing with specifically surgeries in diabetics, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think maybe more natural supplements, specifically CBD, could help benefit.
Well, diabetes is a huge problem. Obesity is a huge problem because secondarily people have called these fancy terms now metabolic syndrome and all these things. But the problem is the sugar just is too high and it clogs the blood vessels. So early on in my career when I was taking trauma call, most diabetic patients that I saw were way out of control and they were having to see me for amputations. That hasn't changed a lot because of everybody that has all these issues. It's a cellular level problem like we've talked about, and CBD works at a cellular level to help cause homeostasis, which is just everything is where it's supposed to be. And again, it's like restore normal anatomy in surgery. If I can restore the alignment in your knee or your hip or your spine, that's going to be more successful. It's the same thing with this. The CBD helps level out the glucose levels. And you know, any medication, especially insulin or any of the oral medications that you take, have significant side effects. Sure. And that's what I like about using something that's not a medicine, so to speak. It's a supplement. It's going to make the cell work more efficiently.
Well, and I've always said, you know, we all suffer from a deficiency of our endocannabinoid system, or ECS, right? And I believe, and now science has proven, that just about every functional system of our body is tied to the ECS, tied to the endocannabinoid system. And so I believe that if we're on a low dose supplement, even from birth, as humans, pets, same thing, that we wouldn't see a lot of these issues that we do. And I know most of the data, you know, supports that type 2 diabetes, specifically CBD, is showing great impact to. Not so much on type 1. From what I can gather, I've found some positive studies, but for type 2, I believe it is a valid option, and for anyone that is type 2 diabetic to at least try implementing this. Talk to your physician about it. I was on a call last night for probably an hour with a mother who was in her 70s and her son. He was 33, and we were discussing, you know, vaccine injury. She believed that he was vaccine injured at an early age, had diagnosed with seizures. Nothing major, but again, since he was 1 year old, was on multiple different Keppra, Onfi, Vimpat, all the way through the list for the last 30 years, and they've been doing their research. I spoke with them in detail about how to, you know, implement this, and the first thing that they said was, look, our neurologist, his neurologist is very much open, recommended that he find a good CBD product, didn't have any way to point him in any direction, but was open to it. And so we're now trying to schedule a call for myself and his neurologist to discuss, you know, the fact that he is implementing a CBD product per her recommendation, and now to help her get up to par on what dosage we have him on, etc., as they begin scaling down those pharmaceutical medications. And that was her goal. And like I said, I'm starting to see more and more physicians around the country open to more natural supplements now that the data is coming out, especially about CBD, and it's not just CBD, CBG, and some of these other compounds that are showing unbelievable abilities to help regulate some of those standard systems in our body, like metabolic, cardiovascular, and bronchio systems even.
Yeah.
CBD is being studied heavily now for bronchodilation, specifically with asthmatics. And my oldest stepson, Caden, perfect example, right? And when I met him, he used a rescue inhaler 3 times a day. He started a CBD supplement every day, and now he won't go a day without it. Hasn't had to use a rescue inhaler in 5 years. Not because he's taking a drug or he's doing something different or he's eating different, only because he added a supplement that I believe it was just a matter of his ECS was
Absolutely.
deficient in.
Yeah. But the bottom line is medicine, current day medicine, the medicines are given to treat a symptom,
Sure.
which doesn't do shit. What you're talking about is you're treating the problem. You're that
The root
homeostasis.
cause.
Because, how do we know what aluminum or mercury or whatever, how do we know if that's high or low? It's so hard to test. If you get homeostasis, which is what you're doing with your treatments with CBD, with being a natural supplement, you're going to cure the problem or you're going to make the problem better.
Well, and that's where I'm really excited about what we talked about yesterday at lunch was the H3O2, structural water, hexagonal water. Dr. Gerald Pollock coined the term easy water, right? But phenomenal. And the more research I've done on it, the more excited I get, right? We now have the hydrogen.
Sorry.
Well, you're just fine. Hydrogen generator at the office. And are beginning to produce H3O2. And I'm very excited to be able to introduce H3O2 into some of our water-based products like the humic fulvic minerals and some of the colloidal coppers and silvers, as it's going to provide hydration on a cellular level. Goodness, something in there, huh? And so it's fascinating what cellular hydration can do just in recovery, in mental clarity, cognitive function, everything. We get dehydrated. I think most Americans, if not all Americans, run around some level of dehydration. None of us drink enough, right? And especially, it's not so much that we don't drink enough. I think it may be that we're not drinking enough of the right thing, which would be living waters, water that still has electrical charge, water that still has vital supplements and nutrients in it. And so, hydration, as I'm sure you're aware, is key to
That's huge.
to life, right, in general. Good to talk, or you want me to go for a
Getting
minute?
there. So, one of the best things I do with my patients, get them off of pop.
Right. So the high fructose corn syrup.
Phosphoric acid. 8 times more injuries than lady athletes who drink pop. Rots out your teeth. It's just a horrible, horrible thing to put in your body.
Tell you what, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back shortly.
Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back. We're here with Dr. Calvin Johnson, and we were just discussing a few current events, from UFOs to train derailments. To,
Yeah.
matter of fact, I just saw yesterday another train derailment in Ohio, just outside of Chicago, and it was actually filmed by a bystander. I was watching the Instagram video, right? And it didn't look like there was any chemical cars there. It was mostly rail cars, box cars, dry goods cars, but they were piled up pretty good. I think that makes in the 50s now, just in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
And so, they say historically that 1,000 derailments a year happen, and that nobody just reports them or they don't get reported. And now that it's getting, attention, but I like to dig a little deeper, see a little more intuitive is what it is. And so like with the Ohio incident, I did see that our Pete Buttigieg made the trip out there finally. I think it was a few weeks too late to really instill confidence in the people of East Palestine, but he did make the trip. And here's my deal: if there was 4 carloads, so we're talking 10,000 gallons, 20,000 gallons in a carload, depending on size of the car, how big they were, of vinyl chloride in there, and those were spilt. Not all spilt. Sure, a lot of it was still in some of those tanks, right? Maybe all of it leaked out. Either way, for the EPA to come out and approve an intentional ignition baffles me, and it baffles me because vinyl chloride, when combusted, releases dioxins. It actually turns into a lot of dioxin, and the specific dioxin that it turns into is the active ingredient in Agent Orange. And so essentially, if the storyline that they're saying is accurate, right, and they fed us over the last 5 weeks that these 4 cars had vinyl chloride and they lit them on fire, personally I would think that there would be a lot more hospitals, a lot more access clinics and physician centers flooded with people with symptoms of vinyl chloride combusted dioxin poisoning, which is inflamed eyes, skin, mouth, lungs, right? And it just doesn't seem like either A, it's not being reported on, or B, it's not really happening. And I don't know. It just feels like there should be a lot more reports of it. And so I pray for the people of East Palestine. I also looked into some reports that showed it's mostly Amish, which is very fertile, very 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 bountiful land, and what ulterior motives may be behind someone to say that there was a train derailment with these chemicals, and some way of trying to get that land bought or acquired. I don't know. I just there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down when you search DuckDuckGo. And a lot of them lead to what seems like some pretty accurate things, or at least things to question.
Well, I have 2 thoughts on what you just said. Number one, the fact that that's Agent Orange just is aggravating, and I think vocabulary-wise, Buttigieg should now mean nonsensical. That's number one. And number 2, President Trump was intuitive and took a ton of water. We were just talking about how important hydration is and all that, and my heart reaches out to these folks. And I worked at the GM plant here loading cars on railroad cars, and I respect what those trains do. I had the engineers that ran those; they were awesome. They scared the shit out of us about loading cars on there and how it would cut your leg off and all that. So something's not right here to have that many derailments and to light up the material and then put it into the atmosphere. That's
absurd, to say the least.
Jackfoolery, or Clay Clark calls it jackassery.
Well, and watch some of the videos of the ignition. Right, there's a bunch of videos out there that show these train cars just up in flames and firefighters standing there with hoses with no hazmat suits on. Reporters standing 100 yards away with no hazmat suit. And again, just no understanding hazardous chemicals, transportation of hazardous chemicals, cleanup of hazardous chemicals. Much easier to clean up vinyl chloride on the ground than it is out of the air. for sure. It's going to come down somewhere, right?
Yeah.
In acid rain form or just dangerous vaporous gas as it settles. And two, if you were going to ignite such hazardous chemicals, knowing that this converts to the active ingredient in Agent Orange, you would not allow anyone within miles and would have to evacuate hundreds of miles in whichever direction the wind blew for risk of immediate reaction to that being in the air and the water.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me. It's mind-boggling, and I think time will tell as this story rolls out and as more and more facts are done. But FEMA, a president, right, who was nowhere to be found overseas in Ukraine, writing more checks, which seem to be limitless and with no bounds by now, versus with the people of East Palestine and providing relief and looking for answers, using the full force of the government to figure out why and how to stop it from happening again. That's what government's main function is to protect the people,
Right.
to provide a safe place for our people. Otherwise, what are we paying them for? Why are they there? And with anything, follow the money. Follow the rail owners back to their political partners, and I think you'll find more and more connections. However, it's just astonishing that the president, the sitting president of a nation, is not there to support his nation in time of need and is more concerned with giving our tax dollars away to what seems to be an endless war now that we're 13 months into it. So
We didn't have any endless war when Trump was here. I want him back.
he was definitely working on ending it, and I don't care what the current president says about the exit from Iraq being his fault. There is 100% at fault there for Mr. Biden's plan. So, yeah, he is running in 2024. Of course, most of everybody here on the Patriot Party Network is in support of a Republican replacement, I would say, to say the least. Definitely, President Trump. I hope he goes hard. I hope he runs hard. I know Ron DeSantis announced his interest in it. I don't think he's formally announced his presidential bid yet, but I'm sure we're not far away from there. And so I hope that it doesn't create too much political divide within the party to be able to, allow the Democrats to pull one off, cheating or not.
Whoever wins, I want them to love Patriots the way that we do here in Oklahoma. You had Roger Stone on one time, and he said we have more Patriots per square foot in Oklahoma than anywhere else, and let's keep it that way. But having taken care of a lot of folks, and one of my mentors was in Vietnam, and just you can't say enough about what these guys, the Patriots, have done for this country. And DeSantis is a Patriot, Trump is a Patriot supporter. I think we're going to do okay with either one of those guys. I'd love to see Trump win and then DeSantis do two more down the road, but they're not going to listen to me.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
But they do listen to us about the Patriots, and that's what I'm proud about Oklahoma. When we had the bombing, I was downtown at St. Anthony's, and we knew something bad had happened. We got the first 60 patients, but those firemen, those highway patrolmen, those Patriots, those previous military guys, every single one of them was down there, and they were all running to the bombing area, just like 9/11. And I was so impressed with our community, but our medical community too. There was no bickering. Everybody was working as hard as they could, and that comes from your leadership. That comes from your leadership supporting your military and your military keeping us safe.
Absolutely no. And Oklahoma, they call it the reddest state, one of the freest states in the country. We're a 2A sanctuary state. Oklahoma, Texans, most of us here in the Midwest, I think, are going to have a not quite as difficult of a time in the future, right? Especially should, Democrats get elected again. I think our state government is pretty solid. I've had former Senator Jake Merrick on the show in the past, and Jake for the State is a great website to go to get information here in Oklahoma. about legislative changes that affect both positive and negative. He's staying on top of quite a bit of current events and topics, and give him a follow, jakeforthestate.com. But I think that as we enter this next election cycle, we're going to see hopefully a peaceful next year or two. No more summer of love. I fear and prepare for more rioting, more unrest, more civil disputes as they try to drive a wedge even farther again as we roll into the next election cycle. And it's getting old. I'm tired of it.
I hate it.
Most Americans want a safe place to raise their family. They want a good paying job that's steady. And to do that, we've got to get our foreign trade partners and policies under control. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about some foreign trade and policy.
Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back to Pioneering Change. Got Dr. Calvin Johnson in the house today, and we've covered some pretty good topics from health and medical and national disaster and even a little bit of political, right?
Yeah.
So foreign policy, we kind of left off talking about foreign trade, foreign policy. One thing that I've been touching on, I spoke with Roger about it. I talked with Senator Jake Merrick about it, and he's actually working on some legislation currently to hopefully address this problem. And the big problem is, we are not allowed as Americans and American entities to own property in certain countries. Some countries we can. The countries that we cannot own property in, our current trade policy does not allow those countries to own property here. However, it was just recently released that over 300,000 acres are currently owned by citizens or nationals of China, of the CCP. And knowing that the CCP does not have citizens, it has nationals, that they don't get to own property over there, they don't get to own anything, right? They're a socialist communist country, unquestionable. They don't get to own property here either for their own benefit. And so essentially, every piece of property here owned by a Chinese national, and I'm not talking about a legal immigrant that lives here rightfully so and has moved here and denounced their citizenship. I'm talking about Chinese nationalists that are here for entities, businesses, etc. They can own property according to our rules because we don't treat them as necessarily a foreign entity, right? They're an individual. And so currently over 300,000 acres that we know of here in Oklahoma are owned by Chinese nationalists or CCP nationalists or entities owned by nationals of the CCP. And Senator Merrick, along with others, are working to draft some legislation that would specifically allow the investigation of this and the revocation and even forfeiture of those properties should they find ties to any country that doesn't allow us to own land over there, mainly the CCP. And of course the marijuana industry brought a lot of that here, right? It gave a great cover and a great move, and now we're seeing Missouri and other states come online, and I fear that it's just going to open up more ability for them, and it did two things, right? One, in Oklahoma, it drove land prices through the roof. If you wanted to go buy a nice farm that was functional, right, to run cattle or anything else, well, now you're literally paying more money, and COVID didn't help. Writing checks limitlessly to other countries for purposeless wars doesn't help. Inflation, but the driving up of prices of buildings and of farmland is absurd, and we've seen it all over the state. I had a realtor on, Miss Lexi Johnson, here just a few weeks ago, and she was talking about that specifically about going out and getting outbid for her clients getting outbid. And it seemed like they just had a limitless amount of money. They would bid up, and they would go, okay, this is as much as we're willing to pay, and they got bid again. And so she said it was hard to buy a house. Like we had 16 different bids we put in before we finally got someone that just didn't want to sell to a foreign national, and chose a local Oklahoman to sell their home to.
Right.
And so it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's happening. It's happening all over quickly.
A couple of weeks ago, they had this Lincoln Reagan group at the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Steve Bannon was there, and got to visit with him. My wife did, and Calvin Johnson. There's another Calvin Johnson who is a great athlete, who was a Detroit Lions receiver, and so I laughingly tell people that I get seen and think that I'm him. Well, my wife is Magatron for MAGA. And so she's talking to Steve Bannon, and he absolutely said just exactly what you just said. And he says, "Don't believe me, research it." And that's the theme of what you've always taught me. You have that brain that's amazing on chemical reactions, and I think you have a photographic memory. But that's when people like Steve Bannon, he just wants to get the truth out. The truth is the truth.
That's it. You can't twist it. You can't distort it.
You can twist it and you can distort it.
Well, but
and people will believe it.
But when those facts are laid out,
yeah.
And the problem is now we had a great conversation with Senator Merrick about the difference in woke and awakened, right? And the woke want us to believe that the sky's not blue and the grass isn't green. And that up is not up and the down is not down.
Yeah,
right?
And God doesn't exist.
And the God doesn't exist, and
that's a major
you
problem.
can choose your gender, and that we should accept that. And then what's wrong with us for not accepting that the sky is not blue, right? And it's hard as a born in Oklahoma Christian, right, family, God. And country, right, are the values we've been raised on. It's hard for me to accept and understand how someone could even think that. And then I think, okay, well, that falls right back to several different classifications of body autonomy, right, of drugs, and our thoughts on decriminalization, cannabis specifically, right, how it's been demonized, and we're supposed to just accept that this is not good for us and that we should do this over here when really this may be the right thing for us all along. And so again, wake versus awakened, right? Woke versus awakened. I think that now we're seeing more and more come out, more and more realize that maybe I shouldn't have jumped in line to get that first vaccination or that second one or that booster or that last booster. But I think a lot are starting to realize, and I'm getting a lot of reach outs of, okay, how do I proceed forward now? How do I, protect my body? How do I get this, the bad stuff out, right? How do I detox? And
quit listening to liars. Some of those are physicians. Some of those are leaders. Got to quit listening to them. I feel responsible for my family. You do too. But we both know that our wives run the family and they run the health, and they are intuitive and they are smart. And so listen to them. Research the heck out of it, and I hate that the medical industry, you got Dr. Malone who's telling the truth. I mean, go to
Amen.
people who tell the truth, but they're not scared of telling the truth.
Right.
I'm not, and you're not.
No, it's do your research. Dr. Robert Malone has an
Absolutely.
amazing story to tell.
I met him at CPAC in Dallas. I mean, amazingly smart guy, and He's got a bad right knee. I didn't notice that when he was walking, and that's how we struck up a conversation with him. But when I was there, it's so fun to be around like-minded people, like the people that are listening here. We're like-minded, and we're not asking for handouts. We're asking for the truth, and we're asking for our military to be able to do their job.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we have an event the Patriot Party News Network is putting on down in Bowie, Texas. It's a Patriot Party roundup. I'd love to invite you down as my guest.
Love it.
I'll be there.
Where is it?
It's in Bowie, Texas, April 29th.
Awesome. Day after my birthday, so that's my father-in-law's birthday, so we'll party down in Bowie.
There you go. You can go. Tickets can be purchased at the ppnstore.com for anyone that wants to go check out that event. They've got a pretty good event, some great speakers lined up. They're fixing to announce the newest speakers to come out. And of course, we'll be there set up with all the products that we help produce for PPN and for their network and apparel and all that good stuff. So
that's what I loved about CPAC, just meeting the people that are they have new credit cards. Basically everything is based on the United States and the people in the United States. So we'll be there.
Yes, sir. Very good. For more information, you can check out the website, farmerryan.com. We'll have some links up where you can get more information on ozone therapy.
Yes.
And find out if you want to get in contact with Dr. Johnson. Again, we'll post a link up there with his email. Shoot an email.
Be great.
See what you can do. We have a lot of local Oklahomans that watch the show that may want to come check out some ozone therapy. So.
Yep.
Otherwise, loved having you on the show today. Appreciate you taking your time to come join us. I look forward to seeing you down in Texas, and B, having you on again. I think we could probably spend a whole another hour talking about.
Oh yeah, we got 10 or 20 hours in us, but good stuff. Not boring. We've got. I really appreciate you having me on and giving the chance to talk to my colleagues and compatriots.
Absolutely. Until next time on Pioneering Change, we'll keep searching the past to grow a brighter future for everyone. Thank you for joining us. You'll have a great week.
Are we ready on the east?
Ready on the east.
Ready on the west?
Ready on the west.
Get going in 3, 2, 1.